Alright, so here is the Jeep finished up for now. This is going to be the next installment of Wagoneer Dana 44s under a Jeep Cherokee XJ. Right now I'm just giving you a walk around of it. Don't mind the leaves, it is fall now. But let's see. There's been a couple things that have changed and adjusted, and of course, last time I had, trimmed up the fenders. That was the last thing I believe I kind of went through in the video. But since then, I do have my final diff covers. I went through, of course, and did the braking period, and changed up the diff covers. These are diff covers made by a company called Blue Torch Fab, and they make a very nice Dana 44 diff cover. So I bought that. It is a 3" lip with, I believe, 3/16 cover, and I painted it red, just like the color of the Jeep, and what I did with the steering came out really nice. And then, of course, I had to fill it up with fluid again, which is, I went through the braking period. That's what you're supposed to do. Let's go around to the front and see the front one. Here's the front one. It's a little bit dirty right now because it's rained, but it's the same color, exact same diff cover, just on the front instead of the rear. Came out really good and looks really good against, the black axle, and it matches the red steering very nicely, and of course the track bar. Another thing that I did is I coated the entire unibody frame on the inside with internal chassis coating. I believe I used 3 cans of it and did the entire length front to back, and I didn't really do the back quarter section because I did that when I fixed up my frame rails. And then I also drilled some holes where my rocker panels, or above the rocker sliders I should say, sit, because this is just an open panel in here. I drilled a couple holes all the way back like this and coated the inside of this whole panel with internal frame coating as well on both sides. And for shits and giggles, went and got a very special horn. So let's hear what that sounds like. The entire purpose of that horn is to let all neighbors know just how retarded you are. Another thing that I had to do, because this is an XJ, is there is another pinch seam on the front of the Jeep where the 2 parts of the fender come together and get spot welded. So what you do if you're going to run a big tire, especially if you're going to run a lower amount of lift with a big tire, is you do relief cuts all the way up that, similar to how you do a rear fender, and then just bend them in. And on this, I guess you could say cut and fold on the inner fender, I did a line of silicone all the way up it, cut it, well after cutting it of course, then bent it over, and then just painted it with the undercoating, just like the rest of the inner fender. The other side looks very close to that. Now for inner fender lining, there used to be a big piece of rubber that went here. Part of it is kind of zip tied back in place over here, but I was going to attempt to make the rubber inner liner work for the back section back here, but there wasn't really a way to do it. Common thing that people do is they'll run pool noodles in here. I haven't really decided if I want to do that, but so for now it's just kind of an open inside of the fender. You will also notice that the back end of my Jeep is kind of bare because I have the stock bumper and no gas tank skid plate, which is probably the worst thing out of the two situations. But I know what parts I'm going to get. I know where I'm going to get them from. I just need to you know, save up some more toy money to get those 2 parts. And I'll end up having, you know, a whole tire rack back there to put a tire and a nice thick gas tank split plate, so I don't have to worry about, you know, destroying a gas tank and getting stuck off-road somewhere without any gas, and no real way to keep gas in it because there's a huge gaping hole in your gas tank, which is not a good situation to be in. So let's talk about brakes. Those are, of course, drum brakes. I have considered going disc brakes, but the thing is, I don't really need disc brakes because these Dana 44s are out of a Wagoneer, or a Grand Wagoneer. The drums and rotors are a lot bigger than stock brakes on an XJ or a TJ. And if I do a hard stop, a panic stop, whatever you'd like to call it, I can actually lock up these 35s in the rear. So I don't really need disc brakes. Stopping power wise, the only reason I still might end up doing it is, so let's say if I go through water or mud or something, which could happen, obviously, I don't get, you know, water and mud just packed in the brake drum, which, I mean, it's not an issue for, I mean, it's not really that big of an issue because people do it all the time, run drum brakes in the rear on any other Jeep and, you know, get them buried in mud and whatnot, but, you know, there is definitely mud and water and stuff that gets packed in there, and, you know, it needs to get cleaned out. So I don't necessarily need them, but it might be nice to have. One thing I have learned is do not bother going under the knuckle if you're gonna do an axle swap and stuff like that. When I was putting together the parts, ordering up the truss, getting my steering, and getting the track bar, for some reason I decided to go under the knuckle, and it was not necessarily the best decision. I mean, the steering works, and I'm able to actually run it without a steering stabilizer, oddly enough, but I get a so-so bump steer, which, if you don't know, bump steer is when you go over a bump, the steering wheel jostles out of your arms like this, or the front tires will kick one way or the other. So, and the reason for that is because the track bar and my drag link are not parallel. The perfect steering setup would have both of these completely parallel, which with an under the knuckle setup, they aren't. I could get a really big drop pitman arm to get them parallel, which would probably solve the bump steer, but that's not really ideal either. So probably next year I'm going to go ahead and figure out a track bar mount, and then get the proper 1-ton end over here to flip it and do an over the knuckle steering, which will bring this angle way down, and I might, you know, at that point find that I don't even need to do anything to the track bar, either because it ends up being perfectly parallel, which I don't expect, but it could happen. But being that this would be so flat, I can get away without having a parallel drag link and track bar. So we'll see what happens when I do that, but don't do this. So this is what the back of my Jeep looks like now. Now, if you're a Jeep owner at all, especially one who's done a big lift kit, done an axle swap, stuff like that, you'll find you end up needing to carry a lot of tools for those just-in-case situations or things that you didn't expect to loosen up or come apart on you. Anyways, you notice this is an air tank. One of my buddies had this lying around. He got it for like $2 from a tag sale. So he didn't really have a use for it, but I want to go at some point with an onboard air setup. So this is a nice 5-gallon tank that I'm going to end up mounting back here somewhere. Now I have a couple different options, of course. One of them is, since I can't run a spare tire back here anymore, this is why I'm going to have a spare tire carrier, I can put this tank somewhere like that, where the spare tire used to go. And I could, you know, mount it like this, or my other option is in this spot on this side, same thing. Just like over there, I can either do up and down, to the side, whatever I feel like doing, and I just need to run lines all the way to the front, which I'll show you what I can do. So this is my AC compressor, obviously, which all it does is just like any other compressor for air, it just happens to compress refrigerant or Freon, whatever they use in here. I'm not an HVAC guy, but it's pretty easy to just drain all the refrigerant out of it and then convert it to pump just air instead. And there are a couple nice write-ups on places like Jeep Forum and whatnot on how you can make that happen and wire up the clutch to a switch and then have an oiler to make sure that this stays nice and happy, and then run your air lines, intake and exhaust obviously, which would be these, all the way to the back wherever your tank is. So I believe I'll throw a link in the description if you're curious yourself of how to do it. I won't try to explain it in video, but that would be, of course, my plan. Assuming that this AC compressor specifically isn't bad in any way, which, of course, then I would require a trip to the junkyard or something to try and pull another couple of them to see which one, figure out which one's actually good. And this is where I have my horns located. It comes with a small compressor that's on demand and just has air tubes that run to all of the little trumpets for the notes of Dixie. It's a little bit redneck, I admit, but it's a redneck horn. Another thing that, of course, is in the future, who knows if it'll be this year, next year, 5 years from now, is to do some sort of cage build. Most likely, exo/internal. And I would also like to cut the back of the Jeep there, where that window is, and of course have a cage and then a canvas top to fill in that area. I think that'd be pretty cool. A few things that I've learned since taking on the project with my Jeep. Actually a lot. Not all of it has been mechanical though, because while I am mechanically inclined, there are still plenty of things that I need to learn. And that brings me to my first point, is don't be afraid to push your boundaries and challenge yourself in terms of working on things. If you think that your ability is only changing oil, well, don't be afraid to maybe take on something like changing a spark plugs yourself, or changing an alternator if an alternator goes bad. And if you're more mechanically inclined than that, don't be afraid to take on welding, or don't be afraid to switch out a rear end or something like that. And don't be afraid that you're going to mess up your vehicle, because most things that you do are fixable. I can understand if it is your only vehicle, but if you're going to do, work to that degree, like swapping out a rear end or something like that, it's best to have a dedicated daily driver anyways. But don't be afraid to challenge yourself, that's for sure. But yet know your limits at the same time. Like, I figured out that doing re-gear myself wasn't necessarily a good choice because I don't have the specialized tools and I don't have the specialized knowledge, which I could pick up somewhere, but I don't know. For doing gearing, honestly, it's probably best to outsource something like that. I get a lot of people who ask me how much money I spent on that Jeep doing the axle swap and with the rocker panels and stuff like that, and I actually don't really know. I have my money budgeted in such a way where, it's not necessarily a concern or anything, but it's not a number that I really know or care to know. If I can ballpark it, but I really do not have an exact figure at all. And if you're going to get into the Jeep hobby or any automobile hobby, it's very expensive, I will say that. If I had to have a ballpark figure, I don't even really want to give one, to be honest, but it's a lot of money, I'll say that. One thing that I learned to like to do was keep a notebook, which is just a 3-ring binder of a lot of different stuff that I've collected for like instruction manuals. Like in the very back here, these are instruction manuals for a lot of the parts and pieces. They got the Tom Woods one. There's the Oscillator over there. This is an instruction manual for the truss. There's a couple Zone off-road ones in here. various parts and pieces. And then also back here in the folder section is a piece of paper where I've written down all of my part numbers, because being that I have axles in the Jeep that don't actually go with the Jeep, it can become rather confusing about what parts you need to buy. Now, granted, if, you know, it's not that confusing, like it's not the end of the world, but I mean, once you start adding this and adding that, it's a good idea to write down all the various parts and pieces you've bought from local parts stores and stuff like that to put it all together. So I have that. And then on top of that, in the front here, these are actually all of the boxes from the various bearings and seals and stuff that I've bought. So like this is hub inner bearing, this is its part number, here's a hub seal kit, here's its part number, then here are ball joints. That one happens to be the driver lower ball joint. Not that the driver and passenger are different, but I had them marked that way at one time. That's another seal kit, hub inner seal. So it is kind of redundant to have all of that stuff written down, but I also did like the idea of doing this because it fits in the fairing binder as well. Now, in here I could also, at some point if I have to, have notes written down here for measurements for stuff like a cage build, or if I actually did the gear job myself, I could have all of my tolerances and stuff in here. Right now this part is blank, I only have these, but those are some options that you could end up putting in here, or you could do stuff like, I mean, I could even turn this into my maintenance log and stuff like that, even though I have another notebook, I keep that, you know, elsewhere. You're also going to become a very avid sticker collection, whether you like it or not. I have all stickers from various different places that I've ordered stuff from. I got some Iron off-road ones. Here's a Tom Woods one. I got Zone off-road. Got a Bilstein. More than a few Summit ones. And I'm gonna get some big ones like this. This one happens to be another Rusty's off-road one. But anyways, the whole point of this, anyways, is just to keep paperwork organized, really. What I also learned to do was save old boxes and mark them with what they are. So let's see, like this is Dana 44 axle parts. These are a set of Dana 44 Chinese bearings. These would be for like carrier bearings, pinion bearings, and stuff like that. I have a box of wiring stuff. I have a box of paint. This is actually for the white Jeep, with the same idea. Then I have another box marked here. These are, I believe it's marked near the side, but these are brackets and other builder parts for a Dana 44 storage. In terms of box storage, usually I just take the box and collapse it down, and anytime I need it, I just put it back together, or, you know, expand it back out, and can just tape it back up. As you take stuff apart and disassemble your vehicle entirely, it's also a good idea to make yourself a big list of everything that needs to be done, to make sure when you put it back together, everything is checked off and you've done everything to make it go again. I like to call this my roadkill list, made famous by the YouTube show Roadkill. So that's what this is. I have everything from the rear over on the left, everything on the front is over on the right, and then stuff that's shared between the two is kind of in the middle on the bottom. And I use this to make sure that everything to make it go again was done before I made it go. Tools are also at a premium. A tool set like this will get you a long way in terms of doing a lot of work on your own car. But if you're going to do custom work, there are some specialized tools that you will end up needing, like torque wrenches, ball joint presses, or any kind of bearing presses or pullers, pry bars, odd size sockets from like 1 1/8 inch, 1 1/16, 36mm, 24mm. You also want a very nice collection of hammers and pipes. Obviously the hammers for hitting shit, and the pipes are to give you extra torque on your wrenches. And it is also highly recommended by myself to learn the proper way to use a lot of tools and to know which size ratcheting wrenches and stuff like that are the right ones for the job. Because while this 3/8 inch ratchet right here can do a lot of things, you are definitely going to want to have the extra torque and strength of your 1/2 inch drive one. And you can never have too many of the same tool. And also, as a note, air tools are nice, but not necessary. You can get away with pipes and a nice selection of sockets and not ever need an air tool, but they are definitely nice to have. If you're going to start doing a whole lot of custom work, you're also going to become a parts hoarder, whether you like it or not. These are a lot of the old parts that came off my Jeep that were already on it. There's the old diff covers for the 44s. I got an old set of shocks there. Here's the front springs, control arms. That's a box of random metal pieces. There's, on the other side, you can't really see, there's a box of rubber bushings and stuff like that. So I have parts here. I have parts here. These are Dana 44 carriers. There's actually 2 of them back there. I have parts up there. I got more parts up here. This is actually off my Crown Vic. That's the Jeep. I have Dana 44 parts here. There's some parts over there. I got some stuff there. I've also got parts under there and over there. So there's one question I get asked a lot, which is understandable, given the nature of the Jeep that I have. Did you wheel it yet, Josh? No. Did you wheel it yet? Not yet, no. Did you wheel it yet? Nope. And the reason is I really necessarily haven't had the opportunity yet, because my buddy that I usually do my wheeling with has suffered a broken finger and has had broken Jeeps for a while now. So I haven't had the opportunity to go wheeling with him, and it's sort of ill-advisable to go out by yourself. It's usually want to have at least one other person to go with. And outside of that, being that I live in the northeast part of the country, specifically Massachusetts, if you want to really get into it, you have to, or it's really, really recommended to join some sort of club or off-roading club, because they have access to more land than you ever would as an individual here. They usually have agreements with large landowners in the area to use their land and whatnot, as long as you don't destroy it, of course. Which, always make sure you, practice your tread lightly. And being that it's the end of the year, it'd be kind of silly to join a club now and end up paying for their dues when there's been less than half the year left since I finished the Jeep. I finished the Jeep the end of July, early August, somewhere in that range. It may have been early. It might have been more like mid-August at this point. I forget exactly. But I did get a chance to stretch the Jeep's legs. Here's a picture of that. The best piece of advice, besides all the other crap that I've told you: take your time. Don't get stressed out about it. I would avoid setting a deadline for any of your projects, because inadvertently it's going to take longer than you think, and you're going to end up missing that deadline. So just take your time, don't stress about it, just whatever needs to be done, whatever needs to be done. And I would also understand that if you're going to get into doing super custom work like that, you have to really enjoy working on vehicles. It's not going to just be, put a part on here, put a part here, and then, be able to drive it the next day. It's really not how it works. You have to really enjoy working on vehicles and really enjoy, putting something together and actually get enjoyment out of doing that. It's not going to always be just being able to drive it or whatnot. you have to actually want and enjoy working on it as well. Because if a whole lot of custom work on a vehicle, whether it's a Jeep, car, truck, SUV, whatever, there's going to be constant tinkering and constant things that are going to need work on it. And you also have to understand that things take way more time than you may have thought. So that's that.